Welcome back, YouTube family. My name is Jamal Coleman. You have reached the Character Elevation and Motivational channel. On this channel, I like to bring content to the viewers, content to myself that's really just going to help us develop within our character, to elevate ourselves, and just to really have a powerful, impactful transformation in our lives on this journey of life. In the last few of our sessions, the last few of our videos, we've been talking about this victim creator mindset. And when you really begin to dive into what the victim mindset is, it's a perspective. It's a perspective of how we're viewing life. It's a perspective of how we're seeing life. And if we were to talk about this in a psychology class, it would be the schema of how we're viewing life. It's the lens in which we're seeing the circumstances, the events, and the happenings in life. It's how we're looking at it, and when you really just break down just things that happen in life, some of the things that happen in life is random. And what I mean by random is, it could have happened to anyone. It wasn't something that life said, hey, I'm looking for you and I'm going to make all this stuff specifically happen to you. It was time and chance that these events took place and they happened to you. But then on the other hand, there is a lot of stuff that happens in life that wasn't random. It wasn't time and chance, but it was actually a product of the actions that we have taken. It was actually a product of the actions that maybe our parents have taken before they had us, and how they raised us, and maybe the environment in which we grew up in, and then simply the actions and the choices that we make on a day-to-day basis that puts us into the mindset of always feeling like life is victimizing us, or we're always having the bad hand dealt to us, and that's something real powerful and something real important to understand, to rise up out of the victim mindset. The victim mindset, as life happens and maybe undesirable things happen, the victim mindset is, why is this happening to me? Why am I getting the bad hand? Why do I always receive bad stuff? Other people seem more fortunate than me, or their situations seem more better than mine. Why is this always happening to me? As opposed to having the creator mindset. The creator mindset is looking at situations, and the creator mindset or perspective is, as these different things happen, how can I use this situation to my advantage? How can I capitalize on this situation? How can I turn this situation around and allow it to work the best for me? And so understanding that perspective, understanding both of those perspectives, and being able to differentiate, the response that we have as different things happen in our life is very important. But I want to rewind back just a little bit. I want to go back to, that victim mindset, and really break down the perspective that we may have that leaves us stuck in that victim mindset, and then the actions or the mentality that we may have to cause things to happen around us. So every choice that we make has a consequence. Every choice that we think we're not making, we're actually making a choice not to choose. And that choice of making a choice of not to choose is a choice, and that has an impact. So there's no way around it. Everything we do will have an impact, whether it's an adverse impact or whether it's a positive impact. And I'll use for an example, a person is in a job that they may not like the job, but they're going to the job, and since they're in the situation, They have bills to pay, they have kids to take care of, they have a car, they have things to support. And so as they're in that job, they're coming to the realization that, maybe I don't really like this job. I'm not really feeling this job. And so the person decides to quit the job. So because they quit the job and the bills that they had was dependent upon them going to work, well, now they can't pay their bills. Well, now since they can't pay their bills, they're probably going to get evicted. They're probably going to lose their car, and it's probably going to bring other adverse circumstances in their life because of the choice they made. And that person could be in the victim mentality, like, well, how did I end up in this job that I don't like? Well, now I end up homeless. Why I can't pay these bills? Why are all these other problems coming around? Why is this always happening to me? Well, the first thing to understand is, why did you quit the job? Let's start from that point. Let's start from the point of, why did you quit the job? We can go back further and say, how did you end up in that job? Why didn't you try to find something different? Maybe a job that you like or whatever, put the necessary work in. But let's start at the point of that job. And so you can't make rash decisions. And then from your rash decisions, as things happen, we cry the victim role. Because the only thing that has victimized us was our own choices. Our own choices to quit the job, and now we're not in a position to pay the bills or pay the car note, and other things have transpired to make our situation worse than what it was. It was because we chose to quit the job. It was because we chose not to have a plan to position ourselves to create a different situation where we can transition from one job to another job. But because we quit the job, other things have arose that have caused more problems. And now because of more problems have arisen, now we're playing the victim role. Like, man, I can't believe this happened to me. I got a bad hand dealt to me, or, such and such, or whatever. And as those situations arise, we immediately play the victim role, but we victimized ourselves by our own choices. And that's one of the first things to realize to overcome a victim mindset. Are you being the victim of your own choices? And you may think to yourself like, wow, I never thought about it that way. How can I be the victim of my own choices? Well, choices that we make without having a thought process to those choices, without actually counting the cost of the impact of those choices, without actually thinking out a desired result that we want and making the choices that would go in alignment with that, will lead to us victimizing ourselves. As I look back to earlier years in my life, I had victimized myself so many times just by making rash decisions, making decisions based on a desire without having that delayed gratification, making decisions off a whim, making decisions without really putting any thought into the impact of that choice, how it would affect me, how it would affect other people, or what I'm even doing. Not even having any direction to life. And when we make choices out of that, we're either going to be the beneficiary of our choices, having a good outcome, or we're either going to be a victim of our own choices. One of the powerfulest things that humans have been blessed with is the ability of free will, the ability to choose. So we have the ability to make choices, but those choices do not come without an impact of consequences. And those consequences will either make us or it will either break us. And so as we begin to just ponder on this concept, begin to think about this concept, we need to do an inventory. And an inventory is very powerful because as a person begins to do an inventory, they begin to look inside of their self and they begin to take inventory of their belief system, of their thought pattern, of their habits, of your character defects, of your strengths. You begin to take an inventory of what's working for you and what's not working for you. And to be able to overcome this victim mindset, this is one of the first steps, just simply to make sure you are not the one that is victimizing yourself 90% of the time. In other words, you're being your own enemy 90% of the time. And then as our poor choices lead up to the happenings in life that come upon us, we cry about them as if we got the bad hand, but we have brought a lot of the bad hand upon ourselves. And so then, as we take that inventory, as we write down, as we figure out, what am I doing that could be potentially causing these problems in my life, we then begin to think of a strategy or of a way not to create those problems for ourselves. And that's just simply by making better choices. That's simply by seeking wisdom, seeking understanding, seeking that knowledge that would align us or put us in a different position where we're not making those choices that will make us feel like life is happening upon us or we're constantly getting the bad hand. And then one of the next powerful steps to overcome this victim mindset is not only to do that inventory, but it's also, as things do happen in our life, situations that are not desirable, is becoming consciously aware of how we are viewing what is taking place in our lives. And this is just as powerful as the victim. This is just as powerful as the inventory. Because the way we view what's going on in our life, the way we see it, the perspective or the lens in which we're looking at it, will also dictate the way we approach what we're going through. And one approach is the victim mindset, but the other approach is the creator mindset. And you know, two different of those responses could be like, okay, I see what's going on here. I see the problem, but instead of magnifying the problem, let me focus on a solution. Let me focus on a creative way to overcome or to move out of this situation or to pass through this situation. And I'm not saying that every time something happens to us that we're going to figure out a way to get around it, like we won't have to experience it, because some things that happen in our life that we may feel like we're the victim, even though it's still happening to us, it's still something powerful that we can get out of it, even if it is a bad situation. And that's that creator mindset. And then there are situations that start off bad, but if we have a different perspective, we could change them around by using the creator mindset to come about it in a different way, or to go about it in a different way. And this is really important because a lot of times we go through stuff, you know, we're creatures of habit. So most of the time, the habits that we're developed, we're in autopilot. So if we've been used to having a victim mindset, every time something happens, we're not even aware that we're taking the victim mindset. Every time a problem arises, we just have the same response to it. And that same response is that victim mindset. But as we become aware of that victim mindset and then make a conscious effort to change it. And I say conscious effort because once you become aware of it, one of the interesting things is about us humans is we can become aware of a problem, but still don't want to change the problem because we have become comfortable in the problem. And I know that sounds real crazy, but us humans are like that. Sometimes we can desire comfortability in a mess than to move to change, because change puts us in a state of uncomfortableness. Anytime you're going to change anything, anytime you're going to change your mentality, change your character, change the way you respond to something. You're going to move into a space of being uncomfortable because you're moving in territories, you're moving in waters that you have not been before. You've never been there. You don't know how to act. You don't know how to feel. You don't know what is the right act or what's the right feeling because you've never been there. And because we don't know those things, it's the unknown. The unknown is the comfortable. And so that's what compels a lot of us in the journey of transformation, in the journey of coming up out of a victim mindset that would allow us to stay back in the victim mindset, is because we don't want to be uncomfortable. So it's much easier to stay in the victim mindset and to do the same thing we've been doing and get the same results. And this is why I said becoming conscious about it. Becoming conscious about our response and then making a conscious effort to change that response. And not to focus on the problem, but to focus on the solution. The interesting thing is, whatever is highlighted in your mind is what will be magnified in your mind. Whatever is magnified in your mind, you will create emotions behind it. You will create imaginations behind it. You will create neural networks in your mind behind it. And neural networks are these neurons in your brain that every time you're learning something new or every time you're practicing something, your neurons in your brain actually make connections. It has physical growth, and these become neural pathways of thinking. And so for us to have been practicing the same habit, if you're practicing the victim mentality, you're actually just strengthening that mentality by making the same choice every time. And this is the same thing, the same problem or the same challenge that addicts run into. It's that a lot of the addictive behavior, a lot of the character defects, a lot of the habit and the drug mentality has been so embedded in the mind and created those neural pathworks that they actually have to become conscious on each level of their addiction and of their character development to transform from that current state. And this implies a diligence to be active, to be conscious, that every time a situation comes up, to choose not to have a victim mentality, but to have a creator mindset. Not to focus on the problem, not to take the victim role, not to say woe is me, not to create those negative feelings, but to actually consciously choose to do something different. To consciously choose to say, I'm going to tell myself, no matter how different this feels, even if I think this feels wrong, to look and to think about this different. And once we move from that, and once we practice that, we allow ourselves and present to ourselves the opportunity to create that growth and to move in the creator mindset, so that the creator mindset can now be what we do in autopilot or do out of habit. You know, life is real. It really is. And I say life is real because what we choose to do and what we do not choose to do will dictate what we do in life, how we do it in life, and how we see life, and how we feel like life is happening for us or not happening for us. If we want to change, things first must change with us. Change doesn't come from the outside. Change comes from the inside. And personally, the change that took place for me, the change that actually brought about the power to change, is God. It's the power of God. It's the power of Christ. It's the power of the Word of God that gives you the ability to transform.